When my daughter-in-law told me I was no longer welcome in my own home, I didn't cry. I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, it did, but because, in that moment, I realized how far things had drifted without me noticing. It wasn't sudden. It never is. The distance builds up quietly, like dust on old picture frames. One day you wake up and realize you can't even see the faces behind the glass anymore. I remember standing in the kitchen that afternoon. The sun was pouring through the window, lighting up the counter I'd wiped 1,000 times. The smell of coffee lingered in the air. She stood by the door, her arms crossed, her voice calm but cold. "I think it's time for you to move out, Mom," she said. Her words hung in the air like smoke. I looked at her, this young woman who had once called me Mom with such warmth. I saw no anger in her eyes, just finality. And behind her, I could see my son's shadow in the hallway. He didn't step forward. He didn't say anything. He just looked down at his feet. That was the moment I knew I'd already lost my place in this house long before she spoke those words. Underscore 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 underscore. My name is Margaret, but everyone used to call me Maggie. I'm 65 years old. I came to this country more than 40 years ago with my husband, David. We worked hard, built a life, and raised our only son, Ethan. Our first home was small, a single-story house with creaky floors and thin walls. But it was ours. I remember the smell of fresh paint, the nights we'd stay up late planning our future, and the mornings I'd pack lunches while Ethan played with his toy trucks on the floor. Life was simple then. We didn't have much, but we had each other. When David passed away from a heart attack 10 years ago, the house felt like it lost its heartbeat. Ethan had already moved out by then, married to a sweet girl named Laura. She was polite, thoughtful, and always eager to help. I liked her. She had a calm way of talking and made Ethan laugh again after years of him drowning in work. When David died, Ethan insisted I move in with them. "Mom, it'll be easier. You won't be alone," he said. I hesitated at first. I didn't want to interfere, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. So, I packed my memories into boxes, sold the old house, and moved into theirs, a beautiful 2-story home in the suburbs, with a big backyard and a porch swing that creaked softly in the wind. At first, everything was fine. We ate dinners together. Laura would ask for my recipes. Ethan would tell me about work. And I'd spend afternoons gardening or baking cookies for the neighbors' kids. It felt warm. Like family. Like home. But over time, small things started to change. It began with little moments. Laura stopped asking for my help in the kitchen. She'd say, "Oh, it's okay, Mom, I've got it," with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Then she started reorganizing the pantry, moving things I'd placed, and labeling shelves. I told myself it was fine, that she just liked things her way. But one day, when I went to make my morning coffee, I couldn't find my favorite mug. It was a small thing. A faded blue mug with a chip on the side, but it meant something to me. It had been David's. When I asked Laura if she'd seen it, she said, "Oh, I think I put it away." It looked old. That was the first time I felt like a guest in my own space. Then came the quiet dinners. Ethan would come home tired, and Laura would serve the food while I sat quietly, feeling the distance grow like a wall between us. Sometimes I'd try to join their conversations, talk about the garden or something on the news, but the words would fall flat. They'd nod politely and go back to talking about their friends or work. I started spending more time in my room. I'd knit, watch old TV shows, or just sit by the window watching the sun go down. The laughter from downstairs felt like it belonged to another family. Months passed, and then one evening, Laura told me they were expecting a baby. I was overjoyed. I hugged her tight, tears in my eyes. "Oh, Laura, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you both." For a while, things felt alive again. We planned the nursery together, picked colors, and I even made a baby blanket. But after the baby arrived, everything changed again, this time faster. Laura became distant. Tired, maybe. Stressed. I tried to help, making meals, cleaning, taking care of the baby when she needed rest. But instead of gratitude, I started feeling like I was in the way. "Mom, please don't use that detergent for the baby's clothes," she said one morning. Another day, she said, "Mom, please don't hold her after feeding. She needs to nap on her schedule." I tried to follow every instruction, every rule. I didn't want to upset her. But the more careful I was, the more wrong I seemed to be. Ethan started working longer hours. I barely saw him anymore. When I did, he seemed different. Quiet. Careful with his words, like he didn't want to take sides. And then, one night, I overheard them arguing. Laura's voice was trembling. "Ethan, I can't keep living like this. I need space. This is our home, and it doesn't even feel like it anymore." He didn't raise his voice. He just said softly, "She's my mom, Laura. She has nowhere else to go." There was silence. Then Laura said, "I know. But she doesn't belong here anymore." Those words pierced me like glass. After that, things were never the same. Laura stopped talking to me unless necessary. She'd leave meals for me in the fridge instead of calling me down for dinner. Ethan avoided eye contact when we crossed paths. I felt invisible. One afternoon, as I was folding laundry, Laura came into my room. She stood by the door, her hands folded neatly in front of her. "Mom," she began, her tone polite but distant. "I've been thinking. Maybe it's time you have your own space again. You've done so much for us, but I think we all need some room to breathe." I looked at her, my hands trembling slightly. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I already knew. "I found a nice senior apartment community nearby," she said, as if it were good news. "It's quiet, safe, and you'd have your own kitchen. I can help you move this weekend." I didn't say anything for a while. I just looked at her. She looked so sure of herself, so calm, like this was the most reasonable decision in the world. Finally, I nodded. "All right," I whispered. She seemed surprised by how easily I agreed. Maybe she expected tears or anger. But I had none left. I just felt tired. The next few days were a blur. Ethan avoided me. Maybe he felt guilty, or maybe he was relieved. I packed my things quietly, clothes, a few photographs, and David's old mug, which I found tucked away in a cabinet behind the blender. The night before I left, I sat alone in the living room. The baby monitor light blinked softly on the table. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I thought about the years I'd spent there, the meals, the laughter, the long nights holding my grandchild. And now it all felt like a dream I'd already woken up from. When morning came, Laura helped me load my boxes into the car. Ethan hugged me quickly before heading to work. His eyes were red, but he didn't say much. "Take care, Mom," he said quietly. I smiled. Always. The senior apartment was small, just one bedroom, a kitchenette, and a balcony overlooking a row of maple trees. The first night, I sat by the window, sipping tea, listening to the quiet hum of the world outside. At first, I felt empty. No footsteps, no laughter, no sound of a baby crying. Just silence. But slowly, I began to notice other things. The way the sunlight filtered through the curtains in the morning. The sound of birds outside. The gentle knock from the neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, bringing me cookies to welcome me. I started taking walks in the park. I met other women my age, widows, mothers, grandmothers, all with their own stories. Some had been forgotten by their children, some lived alone by choice. We'd sit on benches, share stories, and laugh softly about the little things we missed. It didn't erase the ache, but it helped. Months passed. I sent birthday cards, photos, and little gifts for my grandchild. Sometimes I got a thank you text. Sometimes nothing. I never blamed Laura. I told myself she was doing what she thought was best for her family. But deep down, there were nights I'd lie awake, wondering when exactly I became a burden instead of a blessing. Was it when I corrected her once in the kitchen? When I folded the laundry differently? Or maybe when my presence reminded her of the past, a past she wanted to make her own version of? I don't know. And maybe I'll never know. One Sunday, almost a year later, Ethan visited me. He looked tired, older. He brought flowers and sat quietly on the couch, hands clasped together. "Mom," he said, "I'm sorry." I smiled. "For what?" "For everything." I shook my head. "You don't have to be sorry, Ethan. You did what you thought was right." He looked down. "Laura feels bad too. She just didn't know how to handle things." "I understand," I said softly. "You both were trying to build your life. Sometimes there's not enough space for everyone." We sat in silence for a while. Then he hugged me longer than he had in years. Before he left, he said, "The baby's walking now. Maybe next time, I'll bring her to see you." I smiled. "I'd like that." He left. And as the door closed, I sat there quietly, holding on to that small promise, not certain it would happen, but grateful for the thought. It's been 3 years now. I've grown used to my little apartment. The walls are filled with photos, memories frozen in time. I still cook for one. I still walk to the park every morning. Sometimes, I think about that day in the kitchen when Laura told me to leave. I used to replay it in my head, trying to find what I could have done differently. But now, I see it differently. That day didn't end my life, it began a new chapter. It forced me to see who I was outside of being a wife, a mother, a mother-in-law. I found myself again, in quiet mornings, in kind neighbors, in learning to enjoy my own company. And maybe, just maybe, one day, Laura will understand that I never wanted to stay to control or judge. I only wanted to belong, to give love, to feel like family. Underscore 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 underscore. People think the worst pain comes from being yelled at or betrayed. But I've learned that sometimes the deepest pain comes from being quietly forgotten, from realizing the house you once called home no longer has a place for your shoes by the door. Yet even in that, there's peace, if you let there be. Because home isn't just a building or a family name. It's a feeling you carry with you, no matter where you go. And though my hands are older and my heart has scars, I still choose to smile. Not because I've forgotten, but because I've learned that love doesn't disappear when it's unreturned. It just changes shape. It becomes gentler, quieter, wiser. So, when my daughter-in-law told me I was no longer welcome in my own home, I smiled instead of crying. Because sometimes, letting go is the only way to keep loving without losing yourself. And in that small, quiet goodbye, I finally found peace.